to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, respective radio stations island-wide, and online viewers. I'm Rolika Roach, and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, July 26, 2023. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Finance, Artwell Edion, to address you. Minister Edion, you have the floor.
Good morning to the Council of Ministers. Good morning to the media. Good morning to the people of St. Martin. Since I already had some questions already before the press briefing started, I'll start with the pressing matters, which is the Bearing Point situation. First of all, I'd like to state that the Bearing Point matter is an ongoing dispute and as such not opportune to make any detailed comments at this time. However, after considering the recent publications in the media and the inquiries that followed, I have decided to provide a brief synopsis of the recent events. It is important to understand that Bearing Point never initiated proceedings on the merits, but only an injunction proceeding, which did not give a final judgment, but only a provisional judgment. Bearing Point recently filed an injunction procedure against government. In their request, they were seeking a judge order to, among other things, force government to cancel the tender for an ICT system and to force government to adjust a subsequent retender. The judge ordered Country St. Martin, by way of said injunction procedure, to pay Bearing Point a cut of 1 million guilders. The government has complied with this provisional verdict and is considering its options. As stated before, these are not final judgments, as final judgments are based on the proceedings on the merits. As the litigation may follow, there is nothing more to comment at this time other than while government complied with the court's ruling, government is still considering their legal options. In addition to that, I also saw from Member of Parliament regarding the same matters, and I would like to state that I do agree with the MP and I hope that it comes to no surprise when the rightful persons are held accountable. And that'll be all, Rolika.
Thank you, Minister Edion, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment, and Infrastructure, Egbert Duran, to address you. Minister Duran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Good morning, Prime Minister, colleague ministers, members of the media, DCOM team, and a special good morning to the people of St. Martin. Today, I have a few brief updates. Of course, as you know, over the last couple of weeks, I've been advocating, also promoting the cleanliness of the island. We have a joint collaboration campaign going on with our counterparts on the French side in terms of keeping the island clean and pushing that message across, which I believe has been resonating well with the community, not only because of the fact that they see the importance of keeping the island clean, but also the importance of collaborating more often and when we can, as Dutch and French brothers and sisters. So I would like to continue to push that message. In regards to the Dutch Quarter whole sewage wastewater situation, I'm glad to announce again, and we saw in the media a couple of days ago, where we are well on our way in terms of getting this matter rectified. There's a upcoming community meeting which will be published in the coming days as to when the meeting will take place, so look out for that, where we would give the community a direct update as to the entire plan of approach and more intricate details as to how we plan to tackle that, I would say, decades-long situation that has been plaguing the community. In regards to the Prince Bernhard Bridge, as you can see over the last couple of days, starting last week, a team of RUMI staff have been actively busy there. I must say that this bridge repair has been quite back and forth for some time now. Over a year ago, we put out 2 tenders. The first time, there was no response to the tender. The second time, 2 contractors did submit bids. However, the price was very high. And as you've heard me mention here in this medium for several times, finances is quite a challenge for us. So sometimes we have to pick and choose what we can fix and when we can fix it. So we came with a different approach when we have the internal staff take some time off of different things like road patching and different tasks that they have and put some attention to Prince Bernhard Bridge. So that's why you're seeing activity taking place there. It's much more economically beneficial to us in terms of having that process done, although we're sacrificing other works. but the team at VROMI, especially the infrastructure management department, operations section, they are pushing very hard to get this bridge repaired to the best of their abilities, and then we see where we go from there. So I just want to thank them for that. Also, we have some students that are busy with a sort of a job training that we have every summer in government. They're also learning and assisting there, so kudos to them, and I see that they're doing some really great work. Next point I want to update on is I think this was heavily discussed in press briefing and all here, where last year structure was demolished in the Simpson Bay area. I want to give update to the general public. We did have a court ruling last week where the judge basically ruled that Mr. Rolox and his partner was wrong for how they conducted. The inspection department did a detailed elaboration on how they gave warnings, verbal, written, and ultimately had to do the ultimate thing, which we try to avoid as much as possible, which is removal. The message I want to send out is that at the end of the day, you know, the inspectors, they do their jobs. And I always say, you know, I'm the one that signed up to be in the political arena and in the executive branch or legislative branch for that matter. So you can, you know, try to attack ministers, but when you attack staff, I have a little problem with that. So I just want to let the public know that government won the case. They have to pay all court fees, and they were wrong on all grounds. Message to the public: please adhere to the rules and regulations to make, you know, the life of the ministry as well as yours much easier. At the end of the day, we are not in the business of stopping progress. We want progress, but everything has to be done in the right way. Lastly, I would like to update the general public in regards to the hurricane cleanup schedule that we are being publishing over the last couple of weeks. Please pay attention to them so you can get rid of your bulk waste and different things. With that being said, I conclude my opening remarks, and I look forward to any questions from the media. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Duran, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Silveria Jacobs, to address you. Prime Minister Jacobs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika. Good morning to my colleagues. Good morning to the media here present. Good morning to the people of St. Martin. It is an honor. I'm thrilled to be back after my short absence. I was experiencing some illness that would make it very difficult for me to be here and present the information related to the ministry. Thank you for the best wishes of all who sent it, my staff support, as well as those of the civil servants. It warms my heart to experience the patience and care that persons can exhibit. I return to share some exciting updates from our council meetings, as well as reflecting the positive strides that we are continuing to make as a government. Our commitment to transparency and accountability, as was just mentioned by my colleague, is unwavering, and we are eager to keep you engaged in the governance process through these press briefings. Embracing the challenges that lie ahead, we are determined to find solutions that will empower our community and make a difference in the lives of our citizens. We can do so much more together. I want to express also my heartfelt gratitude to all of you who have been a part of this journey. Your presence and participation are vital, and I'm certain that our collective efforts will pave the way for a brighter tomorrow for St. Martin. We are building day by day a stronger and more resilient St. Martin. Unfortunately, we also have some sad news. The government of St. Martin wishes to extend our deepest condolences to the family and friends of Mr. Julian Larmoni, who passed. He served as the first General Affairs Secretary General in 2010 and has had a long experience as a legal mind within government for many, many years. I think he was still giving advice to the organization at various levels. So we hope that his legacy will live on, and his family, colleagues, and friends are made aware that we are in deep condolence with them, as that is also a loss for St. Martin. On the bright side, I'd like to take this moment to extend congratulations to the remarkable graduates of the CERT certification program, Community Emergency Response Team. Their dedication to strengthening our disaster response and reconstruction capacity is truly inspiring. This all came about because of the experiences of 2017, and to listen and recount, we were faced with something that as a country and many countries had never faced before, the Cat 5+. disaster. And a lot, even though we'd had experience with hurricanes and had a structure in place, a lot was still difficult to deal with. And so the dedication of these persons who came forward to be trained over a period of a year shows that while many are talking, there are a lot who are actually acting. And it takes more than government. We really need the community involvement. So their dedication to strengthening our disaster response inspires me. Through community engagement, the establishment of the CERT teams, and the development of evacuation frameworks, they join the driving force behind a safer and more resilient future for St. Martin. This commitment to making a positive impact should fill all of us in St. Martin with pride. So it's not just civil servants that were trained, but community leaders, persons that we run to, that we can call on when we need direct actions. And to hear some of the personal stories on Monday of some of the graduates was really gratifying and inspiring, because not only are you prepared for disasters, you're prepared for the everyday things, accidents and incidents that can happen within your own home, within community events, as well as on the job. So congratulations to them, and I look forward to the continued training of not just our government apparatus in preparation to be able to deal with the challenges that come with all disasters, not just hurricanes. In other good news, the Department of Communication of the Government of St. Martin, that we've owned and operated stmartingov.org website since July of 2010. Since its inception, the website has experienced 2 overhauls, one in 2014 and another in 2018. So we are very proud to be announcing that the newest iteration of the website will be launched on Monday, July 31st, 2023. This website promises to be a more service-oriented. We've listened to our community stakeholders, the end users, and taken all of the suggestions into account. We, as a Council of Ministers, had a preview of it in our council meeting yesterday, and the department, together with our ICT department, will continue to finalize all the last necessary steps to be able to launch on Monday, God's willing. We're very, very proud of this achievement within the Ministry of General Affairs. This will allow people to make appointments via the respective service offering that feature or apply for certain services via the website too. So you'll be able to do it via the ministry direct or via the general website itself. So the services can be searched, found per ministry or by the end user, whether you're a resident, a student, a visitor, or a business. So it specifies specific for the type of resident or user as well. We're also offering an improved user experience, modern design, and mobile friendly. So it's completely adaptable to your mobiles, which most people use today. The website can be also read in various languages. In the months to come, changes will still be happening on the website, such as catering to persons who are or may be visually or hearing impaired. So those are still improvements which are to come. And there will be a media section also offering the end user the capacity or the capability to listen to the St. Martin Gov radio station, 107.9 FM, have access to our YouTube channel, as well as the photo albums and the soon-to-come St. Martin Gov TV station. So all in all, vast improvements in our ability to be able to communicate, as well as for the end users, the citizens, as well as visitors to be able to access information that they need regarding our services, our laws, etc. The last statement I'm going to make is that we are finally able to mention that we have appointed St. Martin's representative to the steering committee of the trust fund, Mr. Ronald Hallman, and he will be replacing our former representative, Mr. Gums, who recently retired after 5 years of dedicated services. So thank you to Mr. Hallman for taking this challenge. And I can also mention that we're in the final processes of the appointment of an acting or deputy governor. So the process is being finalized, and as soon as that is done, then we'll be able to share who that is as well. That is all for now, Rolaika, and I look forward to any questions from the media that I can answer.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, July 26, 2023. Thank you for joining us. Before we move on to the question and answer session, I would like to inform that the Honorable Minister of Justice, Anna Richardson, is present, however, will not be making any opening statements, but available for any questions the media may have. The floor is open. Bibi Hatshaw of SMN News, you're up.
Thank you, Relaika. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, ministers. My first question to the Minister of Finance, Minister Irian. Minister, you mentioned Bearing Point and their injunction. I'd like to go a little further. I'd like to know what is government position on the decision rendered? Are you appealing exactly? And what about the offer that Bearing Point has given government, where they will provide government with computers at a lower price? What is government position with companies that have taken government to court, have legal litigation, court litigations? Is there a blacklist for such companies? If so, is this across the board? Is there a legislation or policy in place for such? And my other question for you, Minister, as you're on it, most recently we have had the Kingdom Council, a motion was presented to give St. Martin more time with the repayment of its debts. That motion was not supported. What is the next step for the government? Is there going to be more cuts or severe cuts, taking into consideration, Minister, that there can be another hurricane since we are in the hurricane season?
So I'm assuming you asked all your questions for all the next 3 rounds at one time, because that was multiple questions on different topics. In regard to Bearing Point, as I mentioned before, I'm not going to go into any detail. No, as a government, we don't have any blacklist, but I do think that there should be some type of consideration in terms of, in the future, in terms of companies that perform in a certain manner and doing future business. No, I had a call from a I would say another government on another island, so not in St. Martin, regarding this whole situation. And no, for them also it was very concerning in general how a company like that would potentially risk their reputation and so forth. So, you know, it's on the entity for themselves to understand how they proceed, but this is the virtual world, so it's not only St. Martin. Every other government is watching also, so, and companies in general. In regard to, sorry, the other questions was what again?
I'm asking, what is the position on government with the offer made by Bearing Point?
I'm not aware of any offers regarding reduction in prices in computers.
And then I'm asking about what is the next step for St. Martin regarding the repayment of debt, since the motion was not passed to give St. Martin more time? Are we going to see more cuts or severe cuts, taking into consideration that we may very well have another hurricane? We don't know.
No, so we are now busy finalizing the refinancing discussions. St. Martin has sent our information, which by the Netherlands said, you know, we have submitted a very good report on that. So we are busy now finalizing that process, taking in consideration still the whole Enya situation.
Thank you, Minister Irian. Thank you, Bibi. I would like to remind the members of the media of our press briefing policies and procedures as it relates to posing questions. Jacqueline Hoffman of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, ministers. Good morning, colleagues. Prime Minister, I would first like to ask a clarification about a question posed a few weeks ago about the well water. You replied that you had received information from the Ministry of Romy that once a year the well water is tested around hurricane season, and that the public is informed about the quality. We verified this with the lab, and we were informed that the last time that government submitted samples of well water is 8 years ago. So I would like to ask when the public will be informed about the quality of the well water. And my question is for the Minister of Romy about the rules and regulation with regards to buildings. Seeing the situation in Beacon Hill, where there's a development of a 4-story building and a 6-story building planned, with the 4-story building having surpassed the building commencement for the building with 11 months. It's now 23 months since the permit was granted. And the other building, the Phoenicians, the question is if there is a building permit, because for both those buildings, pre-sale is being done and apartments are being sold that are not. There is no stone laid yet.
Let me first address my question.
Prime Minister
This is a
Jacobs.
question that the Minister of VSR will deal with, and I will pass this on to him. Because as was you mentioned Ministry of ROMI, I got that information from the Ministry of VSR, and I will pass the question or have them follow up on answering that question. I don't have any up-to-date information, but we do have more than one lab on the island as well. So I understand you're doing your investigations, but I will allow the Ministry of VSR to respond as they were the ones that provided that information.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Jacqueline, can you just pose a question to the Minister of ROMI, please?
The rules and regulation with regard to the building permits, it's described in the building permits that after a building permit is granted, within 12 months, the construction has to start. In the case of the 4-story building, it has surpassed with, in total now, 23 months since the building permit was granted, so it's 11 months past. And the other building is, there's pre-sale of apartments, but the question is if there is a building permit for that.
I'm going to answer the question to the best of my ability. First and foremost, the government is responsible for the issuance of building permits, specifically the Ministry of ROMI. I cannot comment on someone having pre-sale. That's their business, basically. I cannot tell somebody what to post, what to publish, what to sell, because that is not in our line of work. However, what I can say, though, if someone is building without the proper permission, we have the authorization, the authority to enforce such. You're asking me why they are doing pre-sale. I think you're asking the wrong person that question, to be honest.
Asking about the surpassing of the time.
With respect to
If you-
surpassing of the time, I must say I've been here for 3.5 years now. We've issued several building permits, and 9 times out of 10, we have situations where persons don't have enough funds to start construction. Maybe they start a year after, and we're not that tight on that point. We're more tight on in the area of if there's a violation of the building permit. I must say, and you're saying all these numbers, I do not know the facts to justify what you're saying. To be honest, I don't have every building permit in my mind to say when it was issued and the date that it was published, because the date that is published is after the person pays for the building permit fee. So I can sign a building permit this afternoon, and then the department notifies them, let's say within, whether tomorrow or within 3 weeks based on their workload. And after that, the individual or the entity has a time to come in and pay. And if they don't have enough money to pay at that time for the permit, then the permit, let's say if they pay for it in October, then it's published whether in November based on the next time that the Gazette publishes it. So then they have the time from then. So you're giving all kind of months, but I cannot verify that. And I'd rather not comment on that, not
Thank
having the facts.
Thank you, Minister Duran, and thank you, Jacqueline. I would now like to invite Stephen Cyrillian of PJD2 Radio. You have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Good morning to you, Prime Minister. Ministers, good morning to you as well. My question is for the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, with the fall of the Kingdom government and the announcement of elections to take place in November, is there any sitting decision or sitting pipeline decisions that will be affected or impacted by the fall? And if any, can you give us an idea as to what those are?
Thank you for that question. I know a lot of statements are being made in the media, and I would like to, sometimes when we have Kingdom discussions, whether it is, tripartite or it's all 4 of us in the Kingdom having discussions, and then you read things in the newspaper based on what one person says, it gives pause sometimes to understand if we maybe need to be a little stricter in ensuring we have an agreement on the minutes after those meetings before people go public. However, what I want to say is that when a government falls, and this is something that can happen to any of our governments, in this case, there will be an election in November, which can change the way in which the Netherlands chooses to function or is governed. So it can have an impact, but as it pertains to right now, we are continuing with the going concerns, and that is what we're doing. So as was mentioned by our Minister of Finance, we're having continued discussions on the loans. We are having discussions on whether it's the agreements within our reforms. Nothing has changed in that regard. So we have the ongoing things in the pipeline that will continue. Of course, with a demissionaire government, you're not allowed to start with, say, new initiatives. But everything that is already ongoing and is continuous should not be hampered in any way.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Stephen. I would now like to invite Judy Fitzpatrick of the Daily Herald. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Very good morning to you, Relika, ministers, colleagues. I have one clarification and then I'll ask my question. And my clarification is for you, Minister Irian, and it's regarding the bearing point issue. I just want to know, has any consideration been given or will any consideration be given to the fact that Bearing Point wants to continue with the project? And when you had entered office, you said that ministers should be held liable for their actions. Sorry. Do you think that this applies to you in this situation? And my question is for either Prime Minister or Minister Duran. Last week, GB had an issue where they had encountered some issues and they were closed for 3 days, but we never got clarity as to what exactly those issues were. Can you indicate whether it's, was it a hack, was it a ransomware attack, what exactly was it, and was anything compromised? And Minister Duran last week, well, week before the last, you had said you had a tour. You were scheduled rather to have a tour of GB, and you would provide us with an update following that. Can you update us on those discussions and that tour? Thank you.
Minister Irian.
Yes, I'm trying, because I had to hear a lot of questions after that, so I'm trying to remember all the questions. One was regarding Bearing Point and continuing the project. I think that the judge made it clear that our tender process can continue. So again, as a media, did you read the verdict?
Yes, my clarification.
So in the verdict states that we could continue the tender process. So that's pretty clear. So we have even allowed Bearing Point to continue in the tender process. So I think that that's pretty clear in the verdict. And regarding ministers being held liable, I think that was also pretty specific in that case. But I do believe that in any case, ministers should be held liable for any, at that point in time, criminal activities and so forth. But in your question, if it applies to me, be more specific. In what case would it be applied to me? Could be paid a divorce cut out? So in what case, what crime or integrity breach was wrongdoing was done that would be applied to me?
So I asked the question based on statements made by a member of parliament and in relation to the country being subjected to paying, having to pay this large sum of money as a result of a decision you took.
I think that we should look a little. So again, so the question wasn't from you. I guess it's from the MP, but then we have to go back and as MP. I mean MP. Ms. Shah mentioned in the past, we should look at the history of the situation. So I think it came up in the past too already. We look at the history, and then we could then maybe really hold those persons accountable to why we're at this point today. And that I do agree with, which I also mentioned before you came in. I do believe, and I agree with the MP, that all persons should be held accountable for putting government in these type of positions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Irian. Minister Duran.
No, I didn't have any sort of tour as yet. I mean, I guess you can see the excitement that was going on there last week with the closure, so that didn't happen as yet.
Prime Minister Jacobs.
We've received updates as a council from the temporary management as to what was done. The fail-safes that were put in place worked, and they were able to test the system over the weekend and put everything back online for regular work days on Monday past. We have, as a council, received the update in writing, but I've requested a meeting, and once we've had that meeting, we'll get more details. You're not going to have all the nitty-gritty details, but the company is taking the necessary steps to ensure that a proper investigation is done.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Judy. As we move on to the second round, again, I would like to reiterate, it is one clarification and one question per round. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Relaika. My question for the Minister of Romy. Minister, I want to ask for a further update and, if possible, clarification on the issue of the court case that you spoke of in Simpson Bay. When was that verdict rendered, and can you share the verdict with us? My question is, can you tell us when would the hard surfacing road project continue? When would this stop? When the other districts would come online, for example, LB Scott Road? And as we go into this, because it all relates to tendering and projects, recently SOAB have been involved in the evaluation of public tenders. Isn't this a conflict of interest with SOAB doing such, especially since they're the ones auditing government books?
Thank you for the clarification and the question, Bibi. With respect to the court verdict, this was rendered last week. And as I mentioned, it was more geared towards the enforcement and highlighting certain things to the public. Because you remember last year there was a whole big show on the internet and all over on every radio station with the Mr. Rolex campaigning that, you know, Duran destroyed his livelihood, which in turn you check back, it has nothing to do with him directly, but the perception and the narrative was pushed out there. The reason why I chose this platform to bring it up is because the question was brought up here as well. I will inquire in terms of sharing of the verdict. And as the public can see, you know, now he chose to postulate himself. So you can kind of see a trend where these things are going with certain individuals. And at the end of the day, I am pro-progress, pro-development, and pro-people making a livelihood. Because if our own people can't make a livelihood, then who can? That's just my principle. And I try to facilitate and help as much as we can. I reiterate to my staff all the time that at the end of the day, we are public servants. If you don't want to serve, then you shouldn't be here. We are here to give service to the people, especially even tying into what PM mentioned in terms of the new website that is coming online. It's so much easier for the public to get the different services, and it's also a reminder of the job that we do here today. We're not in the private sector. When I'm done with public service, I'll hang up the hat and go in the private sector. We are here to serve, and that principle should stay there. With respect to when the other roads are going to be resurfaced, I have to look to my Minister of Finance to ask when I'll get some more funds, because that is the issue and why we stopped for now. The budget has been depleted with the year of 2022-2023 roadworks. The other tender is coming out, but again, it's just a budget of a measly 2 million guilders. With the extensive work that needs to be done, it doesn't make the cut. Of course, you heard me mention several times about the capital expenditure budget that we are in anticipation of. This will assist with 5 million guilders for the general roadworks and 3.6 million guilders for this hard surfacing of side roads. So I'm just sitting, waiting with my fingers crossed for that to manifest so that we can continue with the works. At the end of the day, I know that there are several roads that require a lot of attention. My next point is to continue in several areas in Colby, K-Bay area, as well as Madam Estate, let's say from the zoo straight forward past Abu Ghazi Shawarma to that intersection there, because the road is very bad there. And one or two other areas that are very critical, and those are the main focus points right now once that money can come online. So it's a matter of waiting for funds to get those things, see those things come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Duran. Thank you, Bibi.
With respect to your question to SOAB and it being a conflict of interest, I'll have to check with General Affairs, YEZ, to inquire if that is a conflict of interest. However, my thinking is that I don't think it can be a conflict of interest, but I'm not a legal mind, because the reason why we scackle in SOAB to begin with is because they are government's auditors. They advise us how to do things correct in advance. So I don't see how advising to do things correct in advance could turn into a conflict of interest. And I think we have to be careful how we use. I know that was the word of, I think, 2020 and 2021. So we need to really look how we measure and use the word conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Duran. Thank you, Bibi. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
Thank you. A question for Minister Irion and the Prime Minister jointly. During the budget debate, it became clear that the travel budget for Parliament was drastically cut, and then it was announced that the amount was restored, and that came from ship registry. Minister Irion, could you tell how many ships have been registered under the St. Martin flags? And to the Prime Minister, what kind of ships are these? And how is St. Martin going to avoid ending up in a situation like Curacao, where the European government reprimanded Curacao several times for ships under their flag that did things in international waters that are not supposed to happen, and that would be the main purpose of reflagging ships to small island countries.
Thank you for your question. In regards to the budget, obviously I don't have the whole budget in my head and all the amendments. So when you have very specific questions like that, you can't expect the answer direct, in press briefing. But in regards to the travel posts and the ship registries, that would have to be, ship registries happen under the Ministry of TIAD. So I'll have to ask for an update on that. Every ministry is responsible for the aspects of the budget that they say that they will generate certain budgets. So we have to get confirmation from him and see the progress on that.
Prime Minister Jacobs.
Yes, as it relates to ships, foreign ships that are now or attempting to register under St. Martin's flag, I don't have an overview of that, and I will check with the Foreign Affairs Department if they have been updated by the Ministry of TIAT as it regards to that. A lot of times when the different ministries are functioning, you're not always aware of the impact on foreign relations that certain actions can have. And so we're busy also trying to ensure that all ministries are aware that when we're dealing with any foreign entity, for whatever reason, that the Department of Foreign Relations is involved to ensure that the proper processes are followed. So I will just follow up on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Before we continue, I would like to inform that Minister Duran and Prime Minister Jacobs will be soon departing the meeting, as they do have another event to attend. Stephen Cerulean, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Rich. I have a clarification for the Prime Minister, and my question is also directed at her. Prime Minister, the appointment of Mr. Hallman to replace Mr. Gums, can you give us an idea as to what procedure was used in appointing him? And my question to you is, the Kingdom Conference is to take place in Curacao. Do you know as to what the agenda point looks like?
Thank you for those, for the clarification as well as the question, Stephen. As it relates to Mr. Hallman, we followed the same appointment procedure as we did with Mr. Gums. We sought a suitable candidate within the community, approached said person, and once he agreed, he was appointed by ministerial decree. I erroneously mentioned in a former press briefing that it was by national decree, but as per the previous manner, it is by ministerial decree. It is a stipend. It's not a full-time job. It's a representative job. And we sought for someone with specific criteria that was needed. And this is the way in which it was done. It was not advertised or anything like that, as this is someone that you want to represent your government. So it was a choice. We had the discussions and approved in the Council of Ministers to represent government of St. Martin in all discussions within the steering committee. That's how that was done. Mr. Hallman accepted, and once the decree was signed, he has started to have discussions already with the NRPB and meeting the other steering committee members. As it relates to the Kingdom Conference, this was one of the things that was mentioned in the newspaper, which I thought, I read the headline and I was like, what? And then when I read the article, I'm like, oh, so the article is saying what happened, but of course, clickbait is a thing now. whereas people are just putting sensational headlines, and if persons don't take the time to read, they don't get the full story. We had meetings on, as you know, I meet with the state secretary and the other two prime ministers quite regularly. And this since in January, we had our ministerial conference here in St. Martin, where we agreed on adopting mutual regulation to manage our reforms as countries in collaboration with the Ministry of Basic Care and the state secretary. One of the points agreed was that we were had a Kingdom Conference. The discussions have been ongoing on a technical level, and here and there, topics come up for discussion at the ministerial level. At our last ministerial discussion, in that discussion, the dates that were being proposed, which were early in December, were not feasible. It is not to say that St. Martin does not want to have a Kingdom Conference or does not want to host. As a matter of fact, it was not St. Martin's turn to host. It was actually the Netherlands' turn to host. But based on the time of the year and not wanting to travel at that time, I offered to host. However, looking at the dates when we would have our elections, our very small staff here at government, as you know, we continue to talk about capacity constraints. It would be a heavy burden upon the meager staff within the government or apparatus to actually lead in organizing the conference. So therefore, I propose that we move it either much earlier or much later. Also seeing the fact that there was a recent fall of government in terms of it's a demissionary government. How are we going to come to any decisions? And so the technical teams are having further discussions. It may be earlier. That's what they're looking at now. And Curacao had agreed to host it. Again, even though it's not either of our turns. So I will update once I know further. I still think, and I can have my opinion on that, when we planned a Kingdom Conference, we had a situation. Now going into a Kingdom Conference with a demissionary government and our government preparing for elections, that's two governments that are in, let's say, a limbo, let's say. So effective, I'm not sure it can be as effective. And I think we should be realistic with the usage of time and money as well. So I will continue to deliberate with my colleagues in terms of the feasibility. We're looking at an earlier date now. Hopefully we'll be able to pull it off. The content has not yet been approved. They're still looking at format. They're looking at all of the other technical aspects first. And when I know more, I will divulge more. And hopefully my colleagues will also liaise with us in terms of let us put out a joint statement even, since it's a Kingdom Conference. So this is the last I will say on the topic for now, but we are still looking at hosting it earlier than the proposed date.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Stephen. Judy? Thank you, Prime Minister. Judy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I do have a clarification and a question. My clarification and question is for you, Prime Minister, and it's regarding your earlier previous press briefing comments regarding the whole Enya situation. Government had until mid-July to make a decision on a solution for Enya. What is the solution decided upon? And my question, I've noticed some ads running regarding plastic-free, I believe it's the SMDF, they're looking for legal and statistical consultants to do some research into that. Does this mean that the implementation on the ban that Parliament passed, does it mean that there's a delay now because that was supposed to go into effect as of August 1st in terms of banning the importation of plastic? Thank you so much.
So as it relates to the Enya, as Minister mentioned, and I think it was mentioned, we had gotten an extension to be able to finalize the process. We have finalized or sent in our report, and the discussion regarding Enya is still ongoing between the three governments and the Central Bank of St. Martin and Curacao. So that is still ongoing. As it relates to the plastic-free St. Martin campaign, that is from, let's call it the EU Resembid funding out of General Affairs. The awareness campaign will continue. As part of that campaign, the SMDF, as the executing body, is in looking for some technical assistance to move that process along. the collaboration between the necessary ministries of, I believe, Justice and TEAT needs to take place for the implementation part to start. So we will continue as General Affairs with our awareness campaign as the rest of the ministries that are forming the necessary actors and needed legislation or whatever needs to be done for the implementation, they will continue to do what they have to do, and hopefully we can get an update via the Ministry of Justice and TEAT in that regard.
Judy, can you take the mic so we can have you, please?
My apologies. We had received a press release 3 months ago saying that as of August 1st, the process of there would be an implementation on the ban of plastics to St. Martin.
Or
and that
to
was
import.
correct. And however, that was sent as the press release indicated that it was part of the implementation of the law.
So I believe the Minister of TEAT would have to clarify whether that is still feasible or not. I do not believe that it will be for the 1st of August for sure, as the recent meeting held requires some other steps to be taken prior. So that's why an update from the Ministry of TEAT and Justice will be needed in this regard.
Thank you, Judy. We now move on to the third round. BB, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ruleika. My question for the Minister of Justice. Minister, can you give us an update on the UNOPS prison project? And also tell us at what levels, what security level are we looking into, Minister? And also an update on the IND project that to regulate the undocumented, especially those that are employed by the same employer for 5 years and over.
Okay, pleasant good morning. Also 3 questions, Bibi. Just acknowledging morning to my colleagues, Prime Minister, Minister Finn, and the media. So question 1 has to do with
UNOPS, the prison,
UNOPS.
and what security level are we looking at?
I smile, Bibi, because we actually had a meeting slated for today to discuss just that. So you are well informed, but the meeting hasn't taken place yet, so I don't have an update on that just yet. That's one. The
Are they on
second-
point though? UNOPS?
UNOPS, oh yes, the process with UNOPS is going very, very well. As you just indicated, we're going to have a discussion about what security level is going to be established for St. Martin. That's a very intense discussion, I would say, because we have to know the level of security we can provide here in St. Martin. We know that we have been sending certain persons of our inmate population to the Netherlands to assist us because risk levels are being assessed, and it is determined that it's best if, with of course, cell capacity being a discussion. We just put out the ankle bracelet policy, which we've had some really good discussions with our stakeholders that are involved with making decisions on whether one should be placed directly in the facility or if they can serve on the ankle bracelet. So indeed, it is a very intense discussion that is going to take place now, but I must say that the relationship with UNOPS is a very fruitful one thus far, and I look forward to us continuing to work with them. Your next question.
The IND and persons, how many persons got permit with the project that was taking place?
The last update that I got was somewhere around 10 completed, and that comes from the reality of there are reactions, there are appointments being set, but the provision of the necessary documents in a timely manner continues to be a challenge. And I know persons like to express that it's a tedious one, but these same documents are relevant in any aspect. If you're going to open a bank account, etc., you have to be able to show the structure of your company, that you are well established, you're paying your taxes, etc. So I'm oftentimes not really understanding why it takes such a lengthy period to submit the documents that are required. Sometimes individuals are asked, or companies, I should say, are asked for additional documents because maybe what you've submitted in the initial state posed an opportunity to ask additional questions because certain things were just not making sense. And for that reason, persons tend to get a bit irate about it, but it is necessary for us to be to ensure that we are taking the proper steps, that companies are in good standing, and that they are submitting correctly for their staff. We did extend the period until the 1st of October. And why the 1st of October? Because the processing time is actually 30 days. And with our season beginning the 1st of November, we need to have our immigration officers in place to be able to handle what we expect to be a very fruitful season for St. Martin. So I don't have any additional numbers in terms of the completed files or completed applications in the process, but I can get those numbers.
Thank you, Minister Richardson, and thank you, BB. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
Minister Richardson and Minister Arian, almost 2 years ago, you explained in this press briefing that the container cells from the prison would go to Turning Point, and that the Minister of Finance would look into it if part of the 8 million for the Mental Health Foundation could be used for the installation of those container cells. What is the status?
So
today?
I can advise that the Ministry of Justice did its part. I signed granting those containers. However, Turning Point had its part to do, be it secure the lot, secure the transport. The aspect that is necessary for the recipient to execute is what's pending.
Has
Minister
the money
Edie.
been allocated to them?
Which money is you speaking? I don't even know which monies you're referring to. I can answer you about the container cells, but
The money that the Minister of Finance at the time explained that would help Turning Point to do that process.
oh, I'm sorry, I'm not aware of.
Sorry, what did I say, Dan?
At the time, you and the Prime Minister said that you both would look into the financing of that process, and that maybe part of the 8 million that comes from the World Bank for the Mental Health Foundation would go to Turning Point to finance that process.
Okay, so I know for pretty much for sure I didn't mention that, but I just wanted to make sure on record to see what you were referring to. I know 2 years ago that what I stated was that we fought to try to get Turning Point as part of the whole Mental Health Foundation through the trust fund money to be part of the whole project, where mental health was getting a new building and so forth. And when we went to the steering committee in The Hague at that time, we fought to get Turning Point as part of it, because we also thought that not just mental health, but also drug abuse and so forth should be part of this process in building the country going forward. And they have looked at it. I'm not too sure how far that process is, but I could follow up with Mr. VSA and the Trust Fund, NRPB, on that.
Thank you, Minister Edion, and thank you, Jacqueline. Stephen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. My question is for the Minister of Finance. Minister, your colleague, Mr. from me, spoke of a depleting financing for the road paving network. Can you tell us as to how soon do you intend to at least send the amended budget to Parliament?
Yeah, so in regards to what the minister mentioned, it was the amount that's on the budget. So it's I believe, 2.5 million. So that has been exhausted, but we've put the money on the capital expenditure, which has been approved by government, Parliament, I believe also the Kingdom Council of Ministers, and it in September goes to the Parliament in the Netherlands to be approved. Once that happens, we'll be able to continue the other road projects, which is about, I believe, close to 8 to 10 million.
Thank you, Minister Edion, and thank you, Stephen. Judy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Minister Arian, can you kindly give us an update on the status of the 2024 budget, the basic bank account law, and the process to introduce stickers for 2024? Are we definitely going to see that going into effect next year? Thank you so much.
So the first question was regarding the
Budget?
2024 budget. Yes, the budget is currently still on schedule. The idea is to have it passed this year. The second question was regarding the
Basic bank account
basic
law.
bank account law. So I know we did our part. I went to Raad van Advies, to the council, of advice. So I have to follow up to see where that is. It should be on its way to Parliament in the end of the third quarter, at least for sure. And the stickers, a project is being initiated now, I believe, with a potential campaign. So the initial project, I believe, is with all the government vehicles and so forth. I believe, I'm not too sure if you were also extended that invitation to part of the initial project. So once we have that and get some feedback, I'll be able to better determine on the next steps. But so far, so good.
Okay.
Thank you,
just-
Minister Edion, and thank you, Judy. Members of the media, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. Any further questions can be sent to the Minister's Cabinet in writing. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, July 26, 2023. For rebroadcast, tune into St. Martin Gov Radio via 107.9 FM, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Rolika Roach and wishing you a pleasant day further.